Shalom, Elder Don. It's been a while since our last conversation. How have you and your family been?
I've been doing wonderful, brother. It's really good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see your smiling face too. So
Uh-huh.
you're in the States right now, right?
Yes. Right now, I'm in sunny Florida,
Sunny Florida. Really, we're at Florida.
in Fort Myers. It's
Fort
close to
Myers.
Naples. That's why I was going to joke with you and say, you see the picture behind me? I'm in Naples, not Naples, Italy, but Naples, Florida.
In a few weeks, I'll be down in Pensacola
Ah, wow,
taking
nice.
a vacation. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I've never been to Florida.
Really?
Never been there. It's
Oh,
beautiful.
wow.
I saw pictures. But
Wow. A lot of brethren in Pensacola in that
yeah,
area.
that's what I understand.
Mhm.
So for our viewers who may not yet be familiar with you and your ministry in Jerusalem, can you kind of fill them in? Let them know a little about you and the work that you're doing in Jerusalem and
Sure.
elsewhere across the world.
Yeah. Well, Yahweh, our ministry actually, this is the 25th anniversary of our ministry out of Israel. And when we went there, we had no idea. We had actually started, we left America and we went down to Honduras. So I met my wife. I don't know if you ever heard the story how I met my wife in Jerusalem, but
I think you did. Yeah, but please
yeah,
elaborate.
it's a pretty interesting story because I was actually in Israel with the amateur archaeologist Ron Wyatt.
Hmm.
So we were there, and it was our last day there. And I was supposed to go over to Jordan to see the city of Petra, because there was a lot of things people thought about in those days with prophecy and whatnot. So Ron came in the night before and he says, Don, he goes, by the time you get over the Jordan and you come back, I'm afraid we're going to miss our flight. He said, you're not going to be able to go. And I said, Ron, you have no idea how disappointed I am that I didn't get to see Petra. So instead, I go to the Garden Tomb, the place of resurrection. I walk in the tomb, and who do I meet? My wife, Petra. People always say, is that her real name? And I'm like, yeah, that's her name. So I
That's
did meet Petra that day. So that kind of started, she's not American, she's Austrian. And she was actually volunteering there. And it was her last day, my last day. So about 6 months later, she came to the US. We got married. And that's when we started our international ministry after that. We started in Honduras, and Yahweh took us to Israel, and we had no idea it would become a worldwide ministry and what we were doing. So this is 25 years. But to be honest with you, since COVID, we really haven't been in Israel. Like, Israel closed down during COVID. For 2 years, you could not get in, you couldn't get out. And Israel was the test case to the world. Netanyahu sold all the information from the Israeli people to the UN to get shots, and it was a nightmare. So we got out of there at that time, and we've been we call it the wilderness. We've been in the wilderness in Jordan, and right in the same area, actually in Israel, but not Israel proper in modern days.
yeah.
So the real baptism site, Jordan River baptism site, is actually on the Jordanian side. So we're in the eastern side, you could say, of Israel these days. But we're on our way. After we come from America, we'll be back in Israel, in Jerusalem again. And, we'll see what Yahweh's will is.
Yeah, your wife's such a nice person. When we were in Israel with you in 2016, we really enjoyed spending time with you and her and your daughter. You have such a beautiful family. And
Thank you.
at times, I know Lucas and I and my dad or Randy, we talk about you, and we always ask, "How's Don doing? Have you heard from Don?" And especially during the whole COVID fiasco,
Yes.
we knew that had been pretty rough on you. But praise Yahweh, you finally, at least for the most part, it seems like we've turned the page on that, at least at the moment.
But let me just add one comment into that, because in the U.S., depending, I guess, where you were and whatnot, I mean, COVID was bad, but not, a nightmare. Overseas and in Israel and other places in the area there, it was really bad. Like, you couldn't work if you didn't have a vaccination. And in some areas, like where we were, you couldn't even go to the supermarket. Like, I'd go to the supermarket, there's a policeman there. You had to show a QR code to get food. And I mean, it just kept hitting me, Revelation 13, in the mark of the beast. So I know people think, and that's not the mark of the beast, of course, because, but with the technology being there and the fact that they did this worldwide, it shows me we're getting close.
Yeah. Yeah, the prophecy says sudden destruction comes upon them. That kind of seemed like it, didn't it? It's like,
And they stopped it as quick as they brought it, was as quick as they stopped it. So COVID was a test. They got all the information they wanted. Now they know the next lockdown, they can do it in seconds.
sure. And if you remember in the States, Biden at the onstart of this said, "Oh, I'm not going to force vaccinations." And then towards the end, he tried it. And if it wasn't for our Supreme Court that struck that down, that executive order, who knows what would have happened?
Exactly.
So there's still remnants of freedom here in the U.S. And we know, in certain states, certain governors kind of put their foot down. But yeah, who knows? Who knows next time politically where we're going to be too. So it is getting a little scary out there for sure.
Oh, yeah. Times we're living in.
Yep. That's exactly right. I was going to reminisce real quick. We were in Israel in 2016 with you, and your tour was fantastic. And I'm not sure if you're still touring or not, but
we are. Not really in Israel right now. Like I said, we've been doing Jordan. Now we have the big one coming up to Saudi Arabia, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. Yeah. I'm so excited for you on that. I know we had batted around the idea of going, and I think it was just kind of short notice, and but hopefully in the future we'll get to.
And one thing is, just so you know, in the future, I would be more than happy just taking, like your group there or the other Sacred Name groups, and you could do multiple. We could do Saudi Arabia. We could do a few sites in Jordan out of there, and Israel. We could mix it. That
would be awesome. I couldn't even imagine.
Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine going to the Real Mount Sinai and then just as the Israelites did, journey to the land.
Yes.
That would be amazing.
And that's what's amazing coming up from Jordan. You actually walk in their footsteps.
Wow.
So as you're reading the Bible, it's like coming alive, like you can't believe.
And so, like we're talking, we have all this against us, the post-COVID world, and the things that are happening, this transgender nonsense and all this other stuff. All these negative things are happening, but then Yahweh is working also. Yes. Especially with you and others, and opening up these areas where we can see him come to life. So, in this darkness, we also see this light, and it's a beautiful thing. It really is.
Yep.
But I was going to reminisce a little bit in 2016 when we were with you. I just wanted to mention, if you remember, we were coming down the Mount of Olives, and we just decided, we could see the city of David, and we could see the harem, and we could see everything there. And we were like, why don't we just do a quick video with Don, and he can explain this area and this region, because it's kind of hard, for people that are not there to understand where's north, where's east, and to understand where the city of David is in relation to, let's say, the Mount of Olives. So we're standing there, and we just kind of set the tripods up on one of these, basically just a grave. And then there's this building kind of blocking the wind. We set up there and we record, I think maybe 30 minutes. It was pretty quick, you and Randy. And when we got back, we edited that and put that on. That is our most popular video online. I think as it sits now, 2.5 million views.
Yes.
And we've been referenced sometimes, even one of the real popular archaeologists, I'm not going to mention his name, but real popular as of recent. And he even mentioned us in a negative context about that video. And it's just kind of like, I have nothing against him. I think he's a great archaeologist. It's kind of sad that, you can't look at certain perspectives, because if it's right or it's wrong, we should at least be able to talk about it. We should at least be able to have a dialogue about it. Absolutely.
And you know what? There's recent videos that have come out. We've even discussed them through email to each other. And I'm open-minded, because again, the story isn't closed with that. So if someone came out, especially a professional archaeologist, and they had dogmatic proof why the temple couldn't have been in the city of David, I'm more than open to listen to it. But I've yet to see it. And what will happen is these guys are coming with preconceived ideas where they're not open-minded. They have already a preconceived idea, and they're not listening to the other side. And when they're bringing things up, or even saying sometimes something that was on that video, they never even watch the video because they're not saying what's actually on the video. So one answer that came up recently in one of these things, they said, well, they say that it had to be in the city of David because there's not water in any other place. But there's an aqueduct that's coming, and we know there's an aqueduct. I talk about that. But you know when the aqueduct is from? It's from the Roman time period. There weren't aqueducts before the Roman time period. The Roman time period is in Yeshua's day. So what about Solomon's temple? So they prove you had to have water, and then they disprove their theory because there were no aqueducts in Solomon's time. So another reason why you would have had it in the city of David. But I would love, whether it would be in Israel or US or anywhere. And I talked to the guy who took over for Ernest Martin about this, about having a conference on the temple. And I think it would be awesome. I'm telling you, you get 1,000 people coming to that. And, I talked about Randy doing it at your place. The only problem with maybe doing it there is because people aren't sacred name. And, you probably don't want people coming into your sanctuary and using the wrong name. But wherever we would have it, I would love to go there. And I would love to bring people on the other side and debate them.
Sure.
Because we have the upper hand. We have the evidence. I'm studying this for 25 years. And like I said, there could always be something that comes, and I'm open-minded. But there's nothing even remotely that comes close to show that the temple was not in the city of David.
Especially the historic evidence,
Yes.
I mean, because there is just mountains of historic evidence. I mean, from the sizes of these Roman camps to Tacitus. I mean, talking about this spring that welled up inside the temple. That's not from a cistern, as some try to kind of, I guess, fit in the equation.
Yes.
But I mean, there's just so much. I know for me, I didn't know when I went there with you, I was kind of on the fence. I heard both sides, but after being there, after talking with you, to me, it was overwhelming. It was overwhelming, the evidence, and it just makes sense. I mean, it just makes sense prophetically as we enter in and Yahweh reveals more truth to his people. And now, I mean, even Eli Shukran found the what he believes to be Melchizedek's temple in that area. That would make perfect sense to me that the temple would have been right there, right at ground zero,
And I've been in there many times with Eli, and he believes, because I'm the one who told him this is the tabernacle of David. And he believes it. He brings groups there and he tells them that's the tabernacle of David. He shows them the scriptures. So I agree with him. That could have very well been the place where Yeshua killed the animal when Adam and Eve sinned. Yep.
Now, do you think too, because there's olive presses in that area, do you think that also could be where Solomon was anointed? Because it's right near the Gihon. Could it be in that area?
It possibly could be in that area. Now, the problem would happen there is there were a couple of other people that believed the temple is also in the city of David that tried to say that was Solomon's temple in that area. And it definitely is not Solomon's temple. It's a small area.
Sure.
So when people come out and give wrong information like that, it kills our credibility.
Yeah.
Because then I could prove that's not Solomon's temple. But like Eli says, it's Melchizedek's temple. And it's the place of the tabernacle of David. And remember, the Ark of the Covenant was in the tabernacle of David in that area. I'm 100% sure, because even the standing stone is still there, over with the tent. And then when Solomon built his temple, it was moved from there. So that's not the place of Solomon's temple, but it was moved from there just over the horizon in the area where Alat Mazar was digging several years back before she passed away, which I believe she found the remains, the bottom part of Solomon's temple, because what she found, she called it David's Citadel. And it can't be David's Citadel because it was outside of the city of David. It's right on the other side of the Milo. But what does scripture say? That Solomon connected the Milo, right, and made it into one. And yet how big was that structure that she found? Exactly 90 feet long, exactly what the temple was, with side rooms like the temple. So that's what I believe. I believe we could clearly show that that's where it was. But I think that tabernacle of David was a big find.
And who knows? Maybe understanding this location will reveal the Ark of the Covenant in the latter days.
Yes, I believe that too.
Yeah. It is such a fascinating area. And to think, if that is Melchizedek's temple, which it seems like it is, and Eli believes it is, that's literally ground zero. This goes back to Abraham.
Yes.
Abraham tithed to Melchizedek. He would have been in this location. This is this is pre-Levitical priesthood. This is the beginning,
Yes.
you know, and it would make sense that Yahweh would reveal this in the end. I just think it's such a fascinating and beautiful thing that we see in the Holy Land. And we are so glad that you're there, Don, being one of us, being one of, you know, a believer in the names. And it is just so nice to have you there. And we just, it's fascinating. And we hope we can continue these dialogues, obviously, into the future, because there's so many people that want to know what's going on in the Holy Land. And now, of course, you know, exploring the area of Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
Which I would like to talk with you about right now. I mean, this is kind of the segue into the main conversation, and that is your trip to the Real Mount Sinai. So, if you would give us some information about that, and why, what prompted you to do this? What happened? I mean,
well, this has been a dream of mine for 25 years. And 25 years ago, I saw the Ron Wyatt video, you know, on his discoveries with Sodom and Gomorrah, you know, which we saw. We got the silver balls from there. And Noah's Ark, of course, which they believe is up in Turkey. And the biggest one that seemed to be was Saudi Arabia being where the original Mount Sinai was. And, you know, at that time, there was scarce evidence for the mountain. You know, but the evidence was good, but it was scarce. But the biggest thing was, to me, was the crossing site. Mm-hmm. That here it was in that water there. You have, I mean, it's ragged, it's jagged. There's no way you could cross. It's like 2,000 feet straight down. But where the crossing site is, it's about a mile wide, and it's like a bridge. When the water would have parted, there's a land bridge there that's 6 degrees, a mild slope to go to the other side. And what do they find in there? They find hundreds of coral-crusted chariot wheels. And I had a couple of them here. I don't even know if you're going to be able to see them in the picture, but you could get these online too, you know, that you can see some of these coral-crusted chariot wheels. And without a doubt, they know they're professional divers. After Ron Wyatt died, there was a Swedish team that went in there, and I met them. They Tim Mahoney, who did the film on that, he was a friend of mine. I met him, and they found a lot of this stuff that was there. So to me, I'm thinking, well, that's the evidence right there. There's no doubt about it. But now on the Saudi side, they started to find. You get to the other side, and there was a pillar. I've actually seen this pillar many times on the Egyptian side because I've been to the Egyptian side many times. And that pillar, they say, was put there by Solomon on the Egyptian side. And then there was another pillar on the Saudi side. So on the Saudi side, the Saudi Arabian government, when they found that out, they cut that pillar and took it. And I was never 100% sure that it was really there because I heard the story, but I never seen it. When I was there, the Bedouin that was with me, because it's interesting, the way they know all this stuff is from the Bedouins that are living there. He told me he's seen it. He told me that, yes, definitely this is there. And they all say this is the Moses of mountain, the Mount Sinai, and that Solomon put that pillar there. So when you go from the crossing site there, which is definitely big enough to fit all the Israelites, they have Mara still there, the place where, the bitter water. You have Elam. You know, I got a picture here of Elam also, where you're in the middle of a desert where there's nothing, right? I mean, nothing.
Just a little higher, Don.
Yeah, let me put that a little higher. So there's nothing there whatsoever. And then all of a sudden from nowhere, you wind up coming to this area, and it's not a small area. It's about a kilometer long, where there's all of these palm trees. And although the Bible says 70, we're 3,500 years later. So there's probably even more than 70 now, but there's exactly 12 wells, like the Bible says, ancient wells. So there's no doubt that and they're calling it Elam. And then there's an area there I went to where they talk about Jethro, that Jethro's from. It's called Midian, you know. So there's no doubt about it. And then you go to the area in Rephidim where this one, the rock at Horeb.
Rock. Wow.
That's one of the most amazing things. And a picture can't do it justice because this is 65 feet high. So if a person was in that picture, they'd be like an ant over there. And you could see, because they've checked this rock out, that there's actually a massive aquifer underneath this rock.
Wow.
And And in an area where they get less than an inch of water a year, this rock has erosion patterns for massive amounts of water coming out of there.
Yeah, that's crazy. I have seen some video drone footage, and I think the first time I saw drone footage with that rock, because I know originally Ron Wyatt had that on his video from years ago.
Yes,
I couldn't believe how massive it was, and the drone footage really like spoke to that. I mean, it is huge. That area is huge, and you're going to think if they're feeding or watering, hundreds of thousands of people.
Yes,
there has to be a lot of water that's coming out, because it's more than their animals too needed water. And so it wasn't just some small little bitty spring. This was a gusher.
And this is right on the other side of Mount Sinai.
Wow. How close
the other thing people may ask is, well, okay, it's a big rock, it's split, it looks like water came out of it, but how can you be sure that's the rock? Well, the other thing over there, you might have seen online some pictures like this, where they show the hieroglyphics of the cows. Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen them?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, when you go there, and I don't know why online they only have limited, there's hundreds of these all over the place. There's so many of them. I documented some. When we go back in November, I'm going to try to get a lot more video footage of it. But around this area, there's tons of these. And it's not just like where the golden calf was. There was those Hathor cows, which they don't have over there in Saudi Arabia. They're only from Egypt. But also, and I think you can even see it on this picture, they show like a man standing on a cow, like he's defeated it, right? So that's like their deity. And this man is showing, that the Israelites defeated, the Egyptians. And then they also have like men like this standing like that, and they'll show it. So there's all different types of pictures. And they also have the sandals. And I've seen these sandals in other places. I've seen them at Mount Hor, where Aaron's grave is. And they almost use those sandals. They also have it at Gilgal. Yeah. The whole Gilgal is in the shape of a sandal, because these people, their minds are literal. And Yahweh says to them, everywhere the sole of your foot goes will be yours, right? So what happens? They start putting these sandals, and in the sandal, you see 3 lines like this, either 2 lines or 3 lines, which is the ancient kaf, which is the palm of the hand or the sole of the foot. So they're definitely from the Israelites. There's no doubt. And not just in that area of Mount Sinai, they're all over the place. It's probably for something like at least 50 to 80 square miles that they're finding. Because remember, the Israelites stayed in Mount Sinai a year, but then they traveled north. So everywhere they went, they're finding the remnants of this.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thousands of years later, we see it. We see it literally etched in the stone, as the rocks literally are crying out. It's beautiful. It's amazing. I mean, archaeology is so fascinating, but this is cutting edge. This is what archaeology doesn't want to either admit, or I don't know. I don't know what the holdback is here. When it comes to scholarship, it seems like they just are blind to it.
It's tradition, right? Same as the Wailing Wall. It's like that. It's almost like you think to yourself, in a day and age like today, right, where we have the internet and we have the internet highway, how can 99% of Christianity believe that Sunday is the day of worship? And yet they do.
Especially when the Catholic Church even admits it, that it's an institution of the Catholic Church. And Protestants that keep Sunday are keeping an institution of the Roman Catholic Church, I think, is one of the main quotes.
Yes.
It's tradition. I think those that study it would. It's pretty obvious, what day Yahweh wants us to meet on, and the thing is, it's a sign between Yahweh and His people. So that is like one of the most important things to get when you're trying to get closer to the Father, is to keep the Sabbath. But back to the Rock of Horeb. How far is that away from Mount Sinai?
Well,
it's on the other side.
Yeah, it's where it is. It's called Rephidim, that area. So it's a whole like open area there in a very sandy area. And then there's like a mountain, because Mount Sinai is actually a range. It's not just one mountain, it's a mountain range. And as you go over that mountain range that's there, you come to Mount Sinai. So my guess is you could make it in half a day.
Okay.
Maybe a day. If with that many people, it would be like a day's
Sure.
trip.
Okay, but relatively close, obviously.
Very close. Very close.
So
if it wasn't for the mountain in between, it would just be a couple hours. But
So
you have to climb through a mountain pass.
did you get on top of the mountain where it's black? Black
No.
and
No. You know,
get
it's
up
interesting. It's very dangerous going up there because it's not, it's like a volcano type mountain almost, like it's all rock.
yeah.
So there's no path to climb. And the guy was telling me some of the other people that come there, he said like almost everybody's gotten hurt. There's somebody that cracked his skull. There's people that broke their legs.
Wow.
So I didn't have so much time when I was there this time either. But definitely when we go back in November, we're going to go up to Mount Horeb that's next to it. So there's, you know, where Elijah's cave is.
Mhm.
You know, so they're very close to each other. And you can get a good look on Mount Sinai from there. But I would love, it would be hard to do it with a group. But if I go back, which I'm Yahweh willing, I hope I will many times, either with myself or just with a couple of people, I definitely want to go up there. Because to me, although there's not a lot up there, the main thing I'd be looking for is either if there's any inscriptions or where possibly the 10 Commandments could have been cut out of. That would be the main thing I'd be looking for.
Yeah, that would be amazing to say
When
the
you
least.
go up on and Mount Horeb, what's interesting on the top, there's two stones and there's a bush right between those two stones. So who knows? You know, I'm not saying that was the burning bush, but you never. But the interesting part is the whole mountaintop is blackened, and when you take that rock, it's not, the rock isn't all black. Like you could take a piece of that rock and break it, and in the middle is normal rock. So it looks like when Yahweh's fire was going, it wasn't just the peak of it. It looks like it was a pretty big fire that was going.
Yeah, maybe I'd like to take a Geiger counter up there and check the radiation levels, you know?
Yes.
So I know you had something happen to you on the way there that was fascinating.
Yes.
Can you elaborate a little bit about that? Because
it was pretty interesting because I really didn't have a plan to go there to begin with. I was making this trip with the group in November, and the last couple of years I actually planned to go there, and each time it got canceled because of COVID. And then Saudi Arabia, when COVID was over, they had a rule you had to be vaccinated to get in. There was no way, you couldn't even take PCR tests, you had to be vaccinated. So I just put it on hold. So when they stopped that recently, I was thinking to myself, okay, we need to make this trip. And one thing with me, and you know, because you came with me in Israel, if I'm going to bring people there, I feel responsible. And I wouldn't want to go with everyone the first time.
Sure.
Experimenting. I know people, it's the only time, the money that's being spent to go there. So I'm saying to myself, I got to go, number one, to make sure I can get in, because I don't want everyone coming and then we don't get in. And number two, I want to see the place. So like after being there, now I changed my whole mode of the trip to make it better, to make it more concise, to see more things, not to waste the things that are traditional, that aren't so important. So that was my whole mode of operation in going down there. So never being there before, I was told I was going to be staying at a hotel or whatever. And I got in touch the night before and I'm like, okay, well, where am I going to meet this, this Bedouin guy who's taking me? And what's the name of the hotel I'm staying at? And he's like, actually, you're going to camp at the base of Mount Sinai. And I'm like, really?
Wow.
Yeah, I'm like, he's like, yeah, they're going to put one tent there and they're going to camp. And I was thinking to myself, maybe Yahweh's in the night is going to call me up there. Who knows, you know? But I was excited, the tent down there. So a guy's driving me to the border. And that's another thing. Most people that come in there, you come through the airport. There's a local border there between Jordan that's not a tourist border. It's a local border. Jordanians aren't even allowed to go in there, but some Saudis that are coming and different things. And it looks like something you'd see in the West Bank. You know, it's like all these Arabs that really Arab looking that don't speak a word of English. And it's not like a border. It's complicated, like even getting there. And you have to go through at least 4 or 5 different points. And there are points where you got to walk, you got to go in rooms, you got to come out. So when we got there, the driver that was with me, we're going through the first stop where there's a police officer there, and he's yelling with the guy, which is normal with Arabs. Sometimes they do that. And then all of a sudden he turns to me and he's like, there's a problem. There's a problem. I'm like, what's the problem? The cops come and take him. They push me out of the car. And the next thing I know, they're taking him away. And I'm not sure, there was a problem. Either his car was illegal or he had a warrant there was something with him or the car. But all I know is he was leaving. I was lucky to get my luggage out of the back. So I'm standing there, I'm like, what do I do now? And I turn around because all these people, it's chaos. They have things. I turn around and this guy is just standing there from nowhere, staring me right in the eye. And he goes like this. He's pointing to me to come to him. And I walk over to him and then he's pointing, come with me. And as I go with this guy, I know something is strange here because there is hundreds of people, there's long lines, and he's just walking in front of everybody and nobody's saying a word to him. And then when someone would turn and look at him, like to say, what are you doing? Their mouth would just drop and he would just keep going. So we go in, I get my passport stamped at the first place, and then we're there and we're inside. And we're walking all this time now, and we come outside, and there's a car there. And I see the cops screaming, like, he's pointing to the car. Whose car is that? They're beeping the horn. He's blocking everybody. And then this being that was with me, he points to me to get into the car. And when the cop looks up and sees him, again, his mouth just drops. And he doesn't say nothing. Not only that, when we get into this vehicle, this pickup truck, he opens up the gate to the other side of the road and motions for us to go in front of all the other cars on the wrong side of the road. So then we get to the Saudi side, and the same thing is happening. I had to go to the toilet, and the cop's like, no, he's screaming at me, over there, over there. It's like past the border, which we weren't to yet. As soon as that messenger walked in, the cop's like, go ahead, right there. He's pointing to it was like surreal. It was like their countenance just dropped when they would see this being. So then at the end, we finally get through the Saudi side, and the guy is there waiting for me. He's like, Don Esposito. I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, you're not going to believe what happened. And I turn around to point to this being. He disappeared.
Wow.
He was completely gone, and the truck was gone. There was no truck there. And I told the guy, I said, I know that was a messenger of Yahweh. And he said, you're probably right. Because he didn't know. He had no idea that there was nobody set up there to meet me or nothing. It was supposed to be this driver that was supposed to take me. So I definitely believe that Yahweh had a messenger there, because I have no idea how he would have got there if the guy didn't take me.
That's fascinating. I know Lucas had read that. He's like, hey, did you see Don's testimony? What happened to him? And this was, a few weeks ago, and he read that. I just couldn't believe it. In fact, Lucas read that in front of the congregation. One of the Sabbaths, he was just like, hey, this is so fascinating. I've got to share this with you. I mean, again, to see supernatural things, as human beings, we love to see supernatural things. But the fact that Yahweh would use that instant, to as you're, exploring the very location, where Moses, was speaking to our Father, to explore that, and then get in a situation like you were in, and then have him supernaturally pull you out of that. It's, I would imagine you were on cloud nine.
I was like in a daze. And I'll tell you something, I've been in the mission field for 25 years. And what I do is I make sure before I leave, my family is okay. I make sure there's food. I make sure they have an emergency number. But once I leave, that's it. I'm not worried about my family. All I'm dedicating this time. I pray to Yahweh, and I put this time in his hands. So when you do that and you're in Yahweh's mission field and something comes up, he'll take care of it, because he's the one that's sending you. Yeah. And I'll tell you, this is the other thing that Yahweh showed me, actually at the mountain, the night I slept there, and, not an audible voice, but praying, I felt his spirit tell me this more than anything, that for I don't know how many years now, maybe 20 years, we've known that's Mount Sinai, but hardly anybody's known it. And there's been a few people that have went there, like Ron Wyatt and the Caldwells, a couple of people, but very few, and nothing against them. I know some of them. I like them. I think it's great that they went there and that they're showing this to people. But as far as I know, I'm the first sacred name person that Yahweh's bringing there. And what Yahweh told me, without a shadow of a doubt, this is about him. It's not about a person. It's not about me or anybody else that's going there. It's about him. And he's not getting the glory for this, right? So they're showing Mount Sinai, and people are selling videos and maybe doing tours and all this other stuff. But Yahweh's not getting the glory. And now, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, in a few minutes, what's happening there, this may all be destroyed. Mm-hmm. So he needs people, his people. He needs people with his name, because I was thinking about it as I was reading the scriptures there at the base of Mount Sinai. It never hit me before, although you know it, it's right there. This was where Yahweh revealed his name to Moses and his people. So it's not only like going to a biblical place. We went to many in Israel, and they're all wonderful. They're all great. The place of resurrection, the city of David. But this is the first place where Yahweh said, this is my name forever.
Yeah.
And if you're going to go there and you're going to proclaim his name, and say in the end time, this is Mount Sinai and everything else, you better do it in the name of Yahweh, or what good is it?
And he etched the third commandment in stone. Do not take his name in vain.
Right there.
Right in that area. So
yes.
Yeah, that's an amazing testimony. I'm just reminded of that scripture that Yahweh's name is a strong tower. The righteous run to it and are saved.
Yes.
And if you're going there as an elder of Yahweh, and we're obviously our ministry, your ministry, so many other ministries in the States that are revering his name and trying to let people understand you can have a personal relationship with him. And the most important thing is, first, you got to know who you're worshiping.
Yeah,
you got to know. And that's like you're talking about. I mean, Moses asked him, that was one of his first questions. What should I say? Who should I tell? Who should I tell is delivering you? You have to know his name. So if we want to be delivered, especially in this world, we have to know his name. We have to revere his name. And I truly believe, that name does have power. And I think that's one instance of it right there in the sands of Saudi Arabia. What you just saw happen is a testament to that fact.
And it shows he's still alive, right? And he's working.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel so convicted. And like I said, whether it's just your local group or other sacred name groups, or especially elders, to go there, because this is, what will do to your faith to begin with. But if people are going to be proclaiming this, if Yahweh's opening this door, shame on us if we're the ones that have his name, that if we're not the ones that are leading this.
Sure. Yeah. It's about faith, right? It's about faith in him.
Yes.
That's very true. Very true. And it's sad, because this day and age, there just seems to be so much confusion, even in the quote unquote messianic movement. You have all these people coming to Torah, which is an amazing thing, and we love to see it. But so many that continue on with traditions, and one of the traditions is using the titles and not revering the name. Yes. And we see that all over, and it's sad that more people can't understand the importance of this. Understand that, I know Michael Bannock always said, we were Hebrew Roots before Hebrew Roots was cool.
Yes.
Before all these guys in the last 20 years kind of came out of the woodwork, we were doing this. And our forefathers have been doing this for decades and decades, keeping the Sabbaths and the feast and revering the name. Anymore, though, so many like you and us and so many others are kind of caught in the noise. Yep. You can't see the forest through the trees because there's so many. And I think it's great, and I hope so many of these believers keep coming and understand the importance of the name, because it's just so rich. We talk about this in the Bible study, how once you understand the name and you use the name, how Yahweh reveals even more to you, and so much more is just rich in the scriptures. And things start making more sense, especially when you understand the Hebrew culture and how names were so important and they were descriptive, that's just amazing. But into the next instance, you were just referring to the fact that they might, there could be destruction of the area. Can you explain what's going on there?
Yeah. When I went down there, I was told, I knew nothing about this, but apparently it's been going on for about a year or so, maybe even a little longer. It's called the NEOM project, NEOM, and it comes from neo is like metropolitus. It means new. It's like Latin for new, and M is from the crown prince there, the son. So in Saudi Arabia, the father got older and the prince took over, but he made this project, and it's with Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan. It's kind of interesting because in Isaiah it talks about, in the end time, this alliance that's being made that'll be when the kingdom comes. But this is Satan counterfeiting it. So they're making this alliance, and over there, you can't believe how big this area is, but it's about 10,000 square miles.
Wow.
And it's like they said the size of Albania, the country of Albania is what it's going to be. But literally, it's going to be, they're making like a metropolis. There's going to be buildings like you see like in Dubai, in New York City. You're going to have all kinds of tourist things they're building near the water. You're going to even have ski resort where they'll be skiing in the middle when it's like 110 degrees. You'll be skiing on the top of these shopping centers. And they already started. They already started paving roads and whatnot. So it's going to take maybe 5 to 10 years to do it. But in the meantime, every process that goes through, they're destroying. And I'm thinking to myself, in 3,500 years, Yahweh allowed this to be preserved, right? All of those pictures that were carved and everything. Excuse me. And after 3,500 years, in the very time we're in the end time, now they're going to destroy it all at one time. So I don't know what they'll do. They're already blocking off to some of the areas. Like we had to go sometimes an hour around to get to one of these sites like Elam because the police are already blocking it off. But one thing is, you mentioned before, why didn't we know about this earlier? Because Saudi Arabia, when this first came out and they thought that this could be connected to the Israelites, they wanted nothing to do with it. That's why they cut down the pillar from Solomon on their side. And again, Saudi Arabia and Israel, they're not allies, although it's softened a little bit now. But they don't want to show that the Israelites came through that area there. So I don't know. I don't know if they'll block it off that you can't get to it or they'll destroy it. But all I know is when you have a metropolitan there and all this other stuff, it will not be Mount Sinai anymore. The desert roads getting there, everything will be ruined. And that's why I say, praise Yahweh, he's opened the door now. But we have a short window to get there, to see it and document it, Mm-hmm. So that's why I said, I'd go, even if it was just a small group with you, if you just wanted to go there filming and stuff, I'd be more than happy to go with you and take the time, because the world needs to see this. They need to see, because there is no greater miracle that Yahweh's did than the Exodus on a physical level that intervened to do all that stuff. And they need to hear it from the biblical perspective. They need to hear from the Yahweh perspective, not the DOD perspective.
And that's what I appreciated about your tour in Israel was the many times we would be out in locations and we would just sit down. You're like, hey, let's just sit here, and you open your Bible and you crack your Bible open and you're explaining what had happened in this area. And it means so much more when you understand the true names, when you understand, the true faith and the Sabbaths and the feasts and all this together. And you're sitting and you were just elaborating on these areas. And I remember a couple different times I actually got goosebumps. Wow. Sitting there, I got goosebumps. I was like, this is amazing. It's almost as if I was just, transferred 2,000 years ago. And, I'm walking the hills where Yahshua was walking, and I do think that having that perspective means so much more, and it's so much more rich. So I'm, this is an amazing thing you're doing, and I am so happy, and we would love to be a part of it, especially into the future, for sure. Yes. Maybe document some of these areas if this is what Yahweh wills, and this is what we're going to do. I mean, we can't say no to him.
Yeah, and right now, like when you go there, there's virtually nobody, even on the highways. There's no cars because it's a desert. And they're saying when this project is done, They're expecting 100 million people a year coming there, and they're going to have like millions of people living there from all over the world. This is like the new age, new world type thing that they're doing there. And
there's no coincidences. There's no coincidences.
No.
The fact that this is happening right there, why?
Why?
As we're getting into, which, obviously we're entering into the last days, there's no coincidences here. They could choose any area that, how big did you say it was? 10,000?
10,000 square miles.
Square miles. And they want to start in this particular region.
In the middle of a desert, right? With sand and everything. Why would you do it there?
Satan wants to pervert everything, doesn't he?
Yep.
And and the fact that, the fact that Saudi Arabia too wants to, most of the Arab nation, most of the, their faith wants to exterminate the idea that, Moses and the Israelites traveled through this area and ended up into the Holy Land. They don't want people to believe that.
Exactly.
But, as with everything else, the Bible always comes to life. You can't, the voice will cry out in the wilderness. You know what I mean? The rocks will cry out. You can't stop Yahweh. You can't stop his information. No matter how much you want to try to, his truth will always come out in the end. So it's a beautiful thing, Don. I really do appreciate you sitting down with us today. And I hope we can make this more of a maybe a monthly thing. I know sometimes getting internet connection, especially with what you're doing and you're all over the place, it might be hit and miss, but I hope that in the future we can make this a regular thing because you're doing such a good, great thing there. And you're one of us. You're one of us, in the Holy Land, and you know what's going on. So many of us over here are kind of disattached to that.
Yep.
And I'll give you one instance. I know we were there. We were talking about this whole Jehovah thing, this whole Jehovah name, and we were telling you it's beginning. It's everywhere. Everybody, they're throwing away the name Yahweh for this false Jehovah. And I remember you just kind of like you were just bewildered by that. You were just like, what? You know what I mean? Because what you see in the land and what you see here are two different things. The narrative over here was no Jews use the name. No Jews know that the name's Yahweh. And over there, you were like, yeah, that's completely not true.
Yeah, exactly.
And I saw it firsthand when we were sitting there eating, and there was a group of Orthodox Jews that sat next to us, and you were using Yahweh's name boldly. You were using Yahweh's name, and I saw them looking over in disgust, and they got up and they moved like 4 tables down. So you can't tell me they don't know what the name is. I saw it, happen.
Exactly. They know it. And like you said, there might be a rare person. I can't say 100% not a person in Israel uses Jehovah, because we especially know one guy, that's, I don't believe he's doing it sincerely, but overall, and like I said, I'm living there 20 years, overall, there's no other name people use than Yahweh. And they would actually tell me, Orthodox many times would come over and say, would you please not use that name? And I say, oh, I'm sorry, because I don't want to offend them. But they knew it.
I know you were saying, too, on Yom Kippur, at the Wailing Wall. Explain that. Explain what happens at the Wailing Wall, Yom Kippur, because people don't seem to grasp that over here. Yeah,
I forget the year that it started, but because before they were saying the rabbis wouldn't use the name, they wouldn't vocalize it at all. We know what happened. They took the vowels of Adonai, and then that's where that false name came up. But then they decided that on Yom Kippur that they could vocalize it. So I heard this. I didn't know if it was true or not, but I heard that at Yom Kippur at the Wailing Wall, as the day is ending and they're blowing the trumpets, that they'll use the name Yahweh. And I went there to see, and I clearly heard it for like 5 minutes straight, crying out, Yahweh, Yahweh, Yahweh. And what's interesting is, I forget it might have been 5 or 6 years ago, the last time I went there at Yom Kippur, I also heard them saying Yeshua.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't believe they were saying it, our Savior. I believe they were probably saying the word salvation.
Yeah.
I heard it clear as day. I'm hearing Yeshua, Yeshua. So it's like, wow, now they're saying Yahweh and Yeshua, which also shows the importance of using the Savior's name, right?
Yeah, well, especially if you look into the Hoshana Rabbah, that whole ceremony that goes on to this very day, crying out for salvation. The Jews have been doing this for millennia. To go back to what you were saying when we were in the Holy Land, We were with the archaeologist Yossi. He's a fantastic guy. He was I really enjoyed my time with him. But he's an Orthodox rabbi. His wife was a Yemenite Jew. And I remember asking him specifically, we were in the truck and I was just like, or the van, and I was like, Yossi, do you believe that the name is Yahweh? And he goes, yes, what Don uses, I do believe it. So I said, do you ever say the name? And he told me I can say it one time on Yom Kippur. So like to confirm what you had just said, he told me that. One time on Yom Kippur. He said some Orthodox Jews can use it all day long on Yom Kippur. But he says apparently his sect of Judaism, whatever, he can use it one time on Yom Kippur, and he will use it. But he also made the interesting comment. He said, but in prayers, when I pray, he says, I don't use God. I actually use the name.
Wow.
So he told me he uses, he wouldn't say it, he wouldn't verbalize it, but he uses Yahweh in prayer. So I thought that was fascinating that he would actually divulge that to me.
Wow.
But again, it goes with what you're saying. And I have to wonder as time goes on, if you're going to see more of this,
I think so.
A connection. So,
and he actually also believes in the Mount Sinai being in Saudi Arabia, as well as Eli does. Eli Shukran.
Really? Well, I know Eli was there.
Yes.
I saw he was there on Facebook. He had some.
I think he was there with what's that fella's name? Richardson.
Mm-hmm.
Joel Richardson.
Yeah, that's awesome. Maybe Ellie can do some archaeology out there. Imagine Israeli archaeologists out there in Saudi Arabia. That might be a problem,
Yep.
But
I'm sure you had a different passport.
Yeah, I appreciate the time you spent with us today, Don. And for our viewers out there that want to get to know more about you, get to know more of your ministry, how can they get in touch with you, especially if they want to go to the Holy Land?
Yeah, the easiest way is to go to our website, www.coyhwh.com. And
you have all the information there for them to I know you have material, a lot of videos out there, really good videos. And you've got good content. And I really do recommend that people check out your site, check out your ministry, because you are doing a great work. And we're so glad that you're there in the Holy Land, Elder Don. So I'm pleasantly happy that I got a chance to talk to you today. May Yahweh be with you on your travels and keep you safe until we can speak with you again. It's been a great conversation.
You also, brother. It's good talking with you.
Hallelujah.